we believe typology can save the world. I'm Amanda Fogelson.
I'm Jessie Miller. Today we are going to continue our series on comparing the cognitive functions because a lot of people come to Typecast Hero and they want to know which functions they rely on, and they might say, like, I know I'm a sensor, but I don't know which one. And to some of you that might seem crazy how you can mix those two things up, but today we're going to explain why if you think you're an SI user, you may actually be SE and vice versa, or you may be something else. You may think you're an N and you're actually an S. So today we're going to be talking about that. And if you are an S user and you're very confident about that, hopefully you learn a little bit about your functions today.
So as we say in the beginning of every video, anyone can be anything. And while we do stand by that, we completely believe in it. In this series that we've been going down, we are really wanting to hone in on the consistencies that we see across the types who are using these functions. So we're going to be giving a lot of examples about specific behaviors or situations that an SE or an SI user might be able to find themselves in. But really the takeaway from this video and the videos to follow this is the motivation behind the behavior. Why are they doing what they're doing? Why are they making the decision that they're making? That's really what we want to focus on. So again, that's your biggest takeaway from this video. Hopefully that is the point of it.
One more disclaimer and then we'll get into the content, but a lot of people will say, that you're wrong because that doesn't fit me, or, my types change because of this reason. But something to remember is that in Carl Jung psychology, you do stay with one type. Types evolve, they don't change. And if you are watching this video and you are a young person, go to our page to see why I'm making that comment to her. If you are a young human, if you are in your 20s or 30s, or early 20s, late teens, you may not relate to everything we talk about because you might be further along in your type development, or you might be somebody who this happened to you when you were younger, and now you're like in your 40s and 50s and it no longer applies. So just things to keep in mind that this is an ideal average. First thing we're going to do is, this is a comparison of extroverted sensing and introverted sensing, extroverted sensing and introverted sensing, and these are both perceiving functions. So we have a ton of resources on our channel. We have a video for all of the types that use sensing. We have a video about comparing S versus N, and we have videos about your cognitive stack, like all the things you could possibly want to know. But this particular video is going to be comparing these two perceiving functions. Now, this means this is how you take in information. So Carl Jung defined cognitive processes, or cognitive functions, as mental processes. They are mental patterns or tendencies that we tend to rely on. And oftentimes this can present in predictable behaviors. So we're going to be discussing them. So extroverted sensing is when a person is involved with their concrete reality. That is actually the definition of just sensing in general. It is concrete. It is what's real. It's very associated with time. It's very associated with personal experience. So extroverted sensing is going to be looking at engaging and experiencing and enjoying the world around them. They're engaged in their environment. They're experiencing it probably fuller than most other types. And they are really focused on enjoying themselves. They want to fully experience this reality for what it is. Not like NE, which is like what it was, or what it could be. But this is what it is. Now, introverted sensing is going to be trying to implement systems or implement experiences that they already know work. Introverted sensors have collected all of these experiences in their life, and when they experience something new, they are going to be pulling on information from the past to see how they can relate to this new item. So it looks like verifying that this is something I know, that this is something that works for me, accounting for all of the details, so that's why they're typically better at detail-oriented things than other types are, and making sure that they understand what is occurring around them. So there are some struggles on behavioral stereotypes if you're trying to figure out how they work. Both of them tend to rely on concrete data, on reality as it is. So they're going to be focused on, these are the facts, this is the information, this is my experience because I verified it and I went through it. This is why it can be difficult to understand if you're SI or SE, because as people get older, introverts look a little more extroverted, and extroverts look a little more introverted. And so people, if they are new to MBTI, and they are just now coming into this journey, they can say, well, I'm a little bit of both. I'm kind of introverted and I'm kind of extroverted, and it can make it really tricky to understand which one a particular person is using. So that's why we're going to be going over this. Now, we probably should have given this disclaimer at the beginning, but
We probably should have.
I have SE inferior.
And I have SI inferior.
So for both of us, this is not a strong function. These are functions that are very challenging and very tricky.
Yeah.
But luckily for us, my father is an ESTP, so that means he leads with extroverted sensing, and
My mom is an ISFJ, so she leads with introverted sensing.
so we both got to see what our inferiors functions looked like up close. So that is the experiences we will be drawing upon as we are doing this video today.
So you won't hear, and if you've watched our other videos like TI versus TE or FI versus FE, you'll hear a lot from us, from our own life and our own personal experiences. But here, we may give some personal experiences if we feel like we have a good situation to bring up. But for the most part, we're probably going to be pulling on others' experiences to give you guys a very good realistic point of view if you are using this as your dominant perceiving function.
But the best way to do this, again, we do not like to go off of behavioral stereotypes, but if you've seen our other versus videos, our other videos comparing functions, examples are the best way to do this. However, you have to look at the motivation behind the examples. And so we will be giving you some very concrete examples, but then what you have to do is you have to introspect into yourself to see which one you use. And if you are watching this and you don't relate to either one of these, congratulations, you're an intuitive. Because intuitives struggle with these things. Or you could be a perceiving bridge type and you could be looping between, but keep all of that in mind as we go through these. If you watched our judging ones, when we compare the judging functions, we focused a lot on how they make decisions. The perceiving functions is how you take in information. So we are not going to be looking at how you make decisions, but we are going to be setting up examples of how you pull in information. I cite a lot of sources. I like to cite a lot of Jungian analysts. So Marie-Louise von Franz is the one who came up with how you explain a lot about the inferior function. But in her book, or in the book, Lectures on Jung's Typology, she gives this example of extroverted sensation, and she gives it from a science teacher. And they are teaching about the anatomy of a worm, okay? And so when she explained this example, she showed that the teacher would just ask people to look at the worm and draw it. Don't ask questions, just look at it and draw what you see. And just get every little piece of it correctly. And she explained that that is an example of extroverted sensation because it's not even relating it to anything. Like, you don't need to have any background about the anatomy or about what a worm is or what even a worm does. It is looking at it and it is transcribing it exactly as you see it. And I thought that that was a really good example, which is why I'm using it. And I'm also giving her credit for it because I didn't come up with that. She did in 1971. So it is incredibly valuable when you are doing something like researching because you are not trying to insert yourself into that example. And it also helps them break things down, like looking at the whole picture of a worm and breaking it into little pieces without getting overcomplicated. So like, you don't need to know, like in that example, you didn't need to know like what the pieces did. You could automatically see it and see how they all work together. And there wasn't a whole lot of analysis that you needed to do. If you put somebody who is a little too extra intuitive in there, they might be trying to break it all into pieces or to try to figure out how it works together or ask, why am I doing this? And that's not really relevant to the task at hand. So if you give an SE user like something to research, they will pull the facts for you or for themselves, and they have a tendency to be a little more open to that information because they're pulling them.
There's nothing else that's happening.
SI is a little different because SI wants to relate everything they are learning to their internal experience. So like for that example that I just gave about the worm, an introverted sensor is going to want to know, how does this relate back to what we've been doing before? They would want to know all the steps. They would want to know like maybe all of the organs that are used in this, like how do all these organs relate to each other? They would want to know, how is this going to help me in the future? They kind of want to know the pieces of this, but they're not going to just take that information as it is.
I can almost picture an SI user being like, let's say you were starting this as like a new subject and the teacher wanted to introduce it in like a fun way. And so they were like, hey, instead of jumping right into a textbook, let's draw the worm in front of us. and this is like the first time you're starting to study about a worm, an SE user would be like, cool, fun, great, let's do it. An SI user would be like, but we haven't even learned about worms. We haven't done any of this yet. So they would start wondering, like, this isn't part of anything else that we're doing. So this is like, it's almost like a piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit.
NE and I are actually really similar to this because NI, just like SI, they want to know the pieces. It's just a little different with what they're relating it to. And SE and NE are more likely to just take in the information. Now, again, what they do with it is a little different, but I'm just explaining. Like, that was a really good example because SI wants to fit it in, just like NI would. SE, NE
will
accept it.
Yeah.
Let me have this information. That doesn't mean that they just accept everything that they're given as straight up fact because they've got judging functions to help them sort it out. But when it comes to just pure perception, if we were able to put these functions in a vacuum, that is the difference between how they would work. So as you can see in that example, when we talk about education, and we mentioned this in the Extroverted Sensing video, it's going to be completely different learning styles. Because Extroverted Sensing can learn something without necessarily having all the pieces, because they see it for what it is. SI is going to require more of those fundamental blocks, which is the way the education system is already oriented to where everything is like building blocks on each other. So those are different.
For some reason, when it comes to SE and SI, it like really like gets me in my feels a little bit when it comes to education, because I feel like I see all the time that like the education system, like in the MBTI community, the education system is set up for SI users or sensors in general. And I just think that's complete BS. Like it depends on who you are and how you're structuring a classroom, how you're structuring a setting. It doesn't have to be the way that it is right now.
But it's not set up for SI or SE, because both SI and SE users consistently tell me that the education system sucks.
Exactly.
There is no type that likes education.
There's not one type that likes the system that's out there right now.
Nope, everybody thinks it was made for somebody else. Which is hilarious to me. Okay, so now going back to switching into information. That is the two different ways that they will look at like research or take in that. So what I want to do next is talk about how they would be with looking in a room. So when they first go into a room, an SE user is actively engaging with that environment. So my dad is a good example. He's looking for, and my dad actually doesn't really like people. That's something else. If you're an extroverted perceiver, you probably don't actually like engaging with humans that much. My dad is very picky about who he likes to talk to. But my dad will be looking for almost like the toys in the room. So he'll want to pick up like an object to play with it. My dad drives me nuts whenever he comes to my house because he wants to pick up all the things and play with them. And I'm like, Dad, please stop touching my stuff. Because they're engaging in their environment. He'll also notice like right away if something is off. So again, he's an ESTP. So he'll walk into my house and he'll be like, did you just paint your baseboards? Or he'll say your baseboards need cleaning. He also like notices like pretty quickly if anybody in our family, like if their weight has gone like up or down, my dad will be like, hey, you lost some weight, didn't you? Like, it's like ridiculous how many details he sees, and it drives me up a wall sometimes. But he doesn't like crowds all that much because it's almost too much sensory overload for him. It's like when he's in a crowd, it's too much things going on. It actually makes him really anxious. He would prefer to have like a small group of friends and be like the life of that party. But when it comes to like carnivals or crowded grocery stores or crowded anything, that's not his jam. Like at all. So even as an extrovert, he would rather be in almost less visually stimulating environments because it overwhelms him. And so SI is more likely to relate when they go into a room. Rather than trying to actively engage, they are looking for something to relate to. So if you want to speak on that one.
Yeah, so for instance, my mom is an ISFJ. So when she's walking into a room, she's more than likely, unless there's something significantly different in that room, she's not going to pick up on it the way that Jesse's dad does. She would pick up on something that related to something we had in our house when we were growing up. So, the older I get, the more that I realize that my mom was right in certain situations. And so I'll recreate the to-do list that she had on our fridge, or I'll recreate like little love notes, like putting little love notes all over our house, because that's like one thing that she loved doing in our little lunch boxes. And so I'll recreate those things, and those are almost like, it could be the smallest little difference, and she'll notice them, but she won't notice anything else in the house. It's not like Jesse said. Again, they're similar in the sense that they can notice it because they are in reality, they're looking around this room. However, she's going to notice the things that she picks up on, that she relates to, or that she remembers, or anything that kind of sparks something in her mind. It's like a trigger almost. Whereas Jesse's dad will just kind of see the whole room and like notice all the small things, you know? And then she also, in terms of being around people, she has no problem being around those that she loves. And that could be, I mean, it's probably her dream to be in a room of every single person that she loves. However, anything else, like if there's someone there that she doesn't get along with, one person, it could be one single person in a crowded room of 50 people, and that one person can potentially ruin that entire situation for her. Even if they don't ever talk to her or look at her or anything like that, she'll be in her head and she'll kind of make up something that could potentially happen, I guess, or has happened in the past.
That's what I was going to say. Is she remembering a bad thing from that person, and now it's impossible? It's very challenging for her, right?
Yes.
To have a new experience. Got it.
Because it's like, it's something that she'll kind of dwell on. So it's like, okay, last time we were here 3 years ago, they said this to me and it really made me upset or it hurt my feelings. And so now I'm about to see them again and I can't get over the situation that happened 3 years ago. And so it could ruin the whole experience for her just because of that one person.
Now let's look at considering a new idea. So if you are someone who, for instance, in my house, my siblings and I, like, we all grew up in various times of being vegetarian. Like, I was a vegetarian and a vegan for most of my life. My sister is still a vegetarian. My brother was a vegetarian for like 15 years. So my dad, though, is hardcore carnivore. But one of the interesting things about my dad is whenever one of us would make that decision to go vegetarian or to go vegan or to do whatever, when any of our crazy diet changes happened, my dad would always like take that information and kind of look at it and be like, this is interesting. I accept your lifestyle. I'm going to just move on with my life. And again, I'm not saying that SE is super open-minded because they've got judging functions. So they can be actually really hard-headed. But something that they can do is they can look at a fact and they can look at it without context, see it as it is, okay, my child is now a vegetarian, my child is now a pescatarian. That's interesting. Let's move forward. So let's drop that piece of information, let's just move on with our lives.
And if they disagreed with it, then they would still be able to take that information and say, okay, I hear you, however, I do disagree with it.
But they're saying they disagree with it because of a judging function, not because of perceiving. So it's like they are looking at information from a more open place. They are looking at information and they're saying, cool, this is information, let's move forward. Now, or they'll try to accept that and then they'll drop it later. SI does not do that. So SI comes with a place where it's like a built-in framework already. So when you give that same information, let's say, because my mom is an ESFJ.
So, well, for example, my sister and I are vegetarians as well.
Okay, this works.
So growing up, when we decided to go vegetarian, I think I was like 12 when I first said it. And yeah, I was like a little baby. And so was my sister. She would have been 10 then. And so when we came out and said it, my mom's immediate, like, I mean, no questions asked. Her immediate thing was, I know that's not healthy. I know that's not healthy for a child. So no, that's not happening. And so because she had learned all her life that you needed protein, and she didn't know, she had not ever had to study this for any other reason. She didn't know any other vegetarians. So she had never studied where you could get protein or if a vegetarian could be healthy. It just sounded immediately unhealthy because all she knew was meat equals protein, protein equals healthy. That was her framework, and what we wanted to do didn't fit within the framework.
Now, the last piece of perceiving information is when they are talking to someone any person, like the information that they are pulling from a person. So like when my dad is talking to a person, again, he's really weird about all of the details. And it really, really bothers me. Because he's like pulling in all of this information and he's noticing all these things about me. And like we'll be in the middle of talking and he'll be like, it's like, hey, did you see that over there? Or he'll say like, what's up with your hair today? Like I hear that, I've heard him say that so many times, it drives me up a wall. Like, or what's going on here with this thing? And I'm like, Dad, can we just like focus on the thing at hand? But he can't because my dad is like looking at all of the things. So even in a conversation, he's really hard to keep on track because he's like running all over. He's like a runaway four-wheeler, like all of the time. And it drives me bonkers.
Which, by the way, we've brought this up in other videos. I don't remember which one it was, but about like ADHD, anxiety, all that stuff associated with cognitive functions. So that I feel like that is something that we hear about SE, is that it is like harder to focus sometimes in conversations like that. And I feel like that was just a good place again to plug in a different video where, do you remember which video it was though?
SE.
Well, okay, well, perfect. Okay. So go watch the SE video. But we did talk about that in there.
SI, when they are talking to someone, they are not necessarily engaging in that moment because they are being retrospective. So like they are pulling all of the things from the past, and so they're not experiencing the current moment. They're actually filtering it through what they've experienced before. So that's kind of like what Amanda was talking about, where if they've had a really negative experience with a person, they are engaging with that person again, and it can be really hard for them to get out of that mindset. It can also be hard for NI. Like, this is not something unique to SI. NI has that similar thing where it's like this set framework and it's really hard to get them out of it. And SE is more experiencing that as it is. Okay. Now, how they explain things. The SE versus SI explanation. So again, my dad. When my dad is telling a story, he will tell a story in the middle as if you know everything else. And again, he won't give me like the background. He won't give me like, who is this person? Who is that person? It's just like, he'll use all of the vague pronouns, like she said, and then she did this. And I'm like, Dad, what are you talking about? Because he starts in the middle because he's so excited. He wants to start where the action is. Again, this is extroverted perceiving because that's how they perceive the world. Like, he wants to start at the most exciting point. So he almost like jumps to the what's that called? The punchline. He'll jump it because he's so excited and so ready to get there. Again, drives me crazy, but I love him. I admire him a lot.
SI does not do that.
No.
SI will start from the start and take their time going through all the details and recreating the entire situation for you, so you're almost right there with them from start to finish. Which can also drive you crazy because you're like, but what's the point? But we're also saying this coming from NI and NE dominance. So I'm much more similar to an SE dom, like Jessie was just saying, and she's much more similar to an SI dom.
And we will have videos on comparing these things as well.
We will.
But this is just extroverted perception. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is planning for the future. So there's this stereotype that the only ones who can plan well for the future are, so sometimes I see it in weird ways all over the internet where they'll say NI is really good at planning for the future, or they'll say NE is the best for planning for the future. Okay. And then they'll say that SI is just stuck in the past and the SE can't do anything. Okay, so this is like what's accurate according to cognitive functions. If an SE dominant has not spent a lot of time planning for their future, or they have not spent a lot of time developing their inferior function, it can make it really difficult to plan for the future because the future is abstract. And extroverted sensing is so focused on concrete reality that something as like mystical, I guess, or as unprovable as the future can be really hard to conceptualize. That is why it is said that they have a hard time planning for the future. But just like I said in the extroverted sensing video, if that is their task, they can plan for the future. Introverted sensing can plan for the future just like an NI user because they are pulling from the past. They know what to expect. They know what to anticipate. And so they are able to plan for the future. SI is not just stuck in the past. That is a psycho stereotype, and I get really frustrated with it. If you throw them off course, if you throw them something that they've never seen before, they may not be so great at planning for something like that. But as a tendency, they usually have 10, 15, 20, 30-year planned out, just like NI. It's just their focus is very different. And again, we'll have videos comparing those two things. So how does your mom plan for the future?
Based on what has happened in the past, she wants to be prepared in the future. So she knows that she's gone through hard times in life, as we all have. And so it's almost like she wants to prepare to make sure that if she comes across those hard times again, she doesn't have to go through the same struggle that she went through. She tries to teach us the exact same way, saying, I've gone through this, life will throw you this, plan for this. And that's kind of like her overarching theme as our mother when we're adults. So yeah, she's always planning according to the stuff that she would rather not go through again. So she's actually really good at future pacing because she feels like it will stop the past from reoccurring.
And so what we want you to take away from this video, if you have not taken away stuff from the content, we want you to stop fighting SE versus SI. So introverts, SI gets a lot of, the only function that gets more nonsense, it would seem, and yes, I'm making a value statement, I'm doing all the absolutes and everybody hates them, but that's fine. The only one that I think personally, to me, because I think that SI gets most crap except for FI. But SI gets so much junk thrown at it, like they're boring, they're sticks in the mud. Someone on Reddit commented on one of our videos, it was the ISFJ video, and they said that as an ISFJ, they actually loved traveling and they loved experiencing new things, because guess what? An SI user can seem very open-minded if that's what they've got built into their framework. So if they have decided to adopt open-mindedness, to adopt exploration, and that is the life that they have, those are the experiences that they enjoy, because that's what they've got in their SI, they're going to go do it. So SI doesn't have to be stick in the mud, like boring, like all of the negative things that I see on the internet constantly. And SE, again, just like my dad, they can really hate crowds and really hate all the sensory overload extremist kind of thing, because it's just too much for their mind to handle, especially if they're extremely extroverted. I've talked to my ESTP friend who says that when he's in a location, he kind of forgets that his body exists. He kind of merges with his environment, which is like opposite of me. I like forget I have a body, and then I'm just like in this like weird head space.
Just like a head, floating head.
Yes, not even a head, just floating ideas. And then he says that he actually like merges with the environment. So like he's so attached to it. He's like connecting to all the things. And I'm like, bro, what is this? That's amazing to me. But point is, world needs both of these things, because the world has enough freaking conspiracy theorists. There's enough people trying to speculate. There's enough NI users telling you that the world is ending. It's true.
It's so true.
There are enough any users telling you that this idea is a great one and then it falls on its face. We need people who are grounded in concrete reality. That would be fantastic. Thank you, world. So also, if you can't figure out what type you are, if you are still stuck on SE versus SI, there was probably a person that you related to more in this story, and there was a person that you probably didn't like very much in the story. So if there's one that you did not like, you probably have the opposite one, because we are naturally oriented to dislike the things that are different from us.
That might be a little bit harder. We've been saying that in every one of these versus videos. That might be a little bit harder here, because again, we're not speaking that much on personal experience, because y'all would learn next to nothing if we were talking about just our own personal experience with using these. But if my mom sounds really annoying to you, or if her dad sounds really like just weirds you out, bugs you out, whatever, then more than likely you're the opposite one.
So last thing, if you still can't figure it out, go figure out the axis, because extroverted sensing is on an axis with introverted intuition, and extroverted intuition is on an axis with introverted sensing. So you can go figure out the axis, especially if you're perceiving bridge type.
Yeah.
Which if you're like, well, I kind of have my own system, but I'm also kind of in the moment sometimes, you're probably perceiving bridge, which means you need to figure out your dominant judging function. So just keep all of that in mind, because being human is hard.
And hopefully this makes it just a little bit easier.
Thank you for watching our video. What should they do now?
Like, subscribe, comment, share, all the things. And keep an eye out, because we are going to be posting videos about each of these functions within the Cognitive stack. So SI is a hero position, SE in the parent position, all those different things. So keep an eye on that. Also, if you haven't already checked it out, check out our FI versus FE and our TI versus TE. And also we will have an NI versus NE up soon. So subscribe so you can see all those things come up on our channel. Love you guys.
Oh wait, also we forgot to plug our shirts. We wore them just for you guys.
We did.
For the SE users. This is 5K I run, because I'm a runner. I'm an athlete, and she supports them.
Obsessed with, oh yeah.
SC inferior versus SI inferior.
Yeah, no, I just really love the flash, and I didn't wear it for you guys, but it worked out really well, so I have to be honest, I did not wear it for you guys. I just really wanted to be in a comfy t-shirt, and this is my favorite one.
Well,
Love y'all.
bye.
Let's gather around the type fire and sing our type fire song. Our MBTI TYPOLOGY song. And if you feel uncomfortable, then know there's nothing wrong.